Our next speaker is Admiral William Phailon, who retired as a four-star admiral in 2008. Was, amongst other things, head of CENTCOM, and is now at the Center for International Studies at MIT. When I was at MIT, there was no such thing as a Center for International Studies. It was all engineering and physics, but that's changed. Admiral Phailon, please.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador. So if we balance the time, I should have 2 minutes, and then I have to depart. I was asked to talk a little bit about the U.S. military in the Middle East, and I'd like to do that for a short while. And just to more in the way of information, to talk a little bit about the relationship between the U.S. military and the IDF and the security forces of Israel. First, I have to tell you that it's been a great honor and pleasure for me professionally, as well as personally, having met many colleagues and associates here in the Israeli security forces over many decades. I've been here many times. I had an opportunity to meet and to work with people in this country, and I have great professional respect and admiration for the things you do and the diligence with which you pursue a task. In fact, I was always envious. I can remember in my younger days that the IDF would be able to focus attention on specific challenges and to work through all the details. And it seemed that, for my part, we were always trying to take on every task and not quite getting the details lined up in any. I can appreciate in my older age that this is a direct result of being able to focus more regionally while we were attempting to wrestle not just the Soviet bear, but other issues worldwide. But specifically what the U.S. presence is and purpose and engagement in this part of the world is quite simply in keeping with our national aspirations. The military commander, and for this region it's rather unique in that the U.S. Central Command has responsibility for all of the area in this region except Israel, which is still with European Command. But nonetheless, the goal for both major commands is to work with our other agencies, national agencies, and with our partners, allies, and colleagues in the region to try to promote stability and security. And that's the bottom line. It hasn't changed in years. We're still trying to. In terms of forces, the U.S. has obviously very large ground forces still in Iraq and Afghanistan. We tend to think of them in this region because they all work through U.S. Central Command, but in fact Afghanistan is a little beyond the Middle East. But we have certainly extensive ground forces. What some tend to forget is that there are very, very large maritime and air forces also in this region, and they're out there all the time. May not be visible to people in each country, but they're very close by. And the important thing is engaged in this process of trying to extend stability and security while supporting our operations in Iraq and Afghanistan, and I expect that will continue. Because of our engagement in the land combat, we may not have been able to exercise as much as we might care to with our friends and partners in the region. What I would expect to see is the ground forces come down in Iraq, and that we'll be able to expand that to a greater degree. And I think this is important because we're looking at trying to work very diligently with partners in the region to enhance what we have been trying to build. An example of that would be in Lebanon, where we had not really had much engagement whatsoever for decades, but now are trying to work with the LAF and the government of Lebanon to try to gain some influence and to be able to help them to cope with their many problems, which you're very familiar. I'd like to shift just a little bit and to make a couple of observations that are relative to the U.S. and activities and security in this region. I'm very encouraged this morning and yesterday evening to listen to the wisdom of so many people who presented their thoughts to this audience. And I, for one, am very grateful that the organizers of this event have been able to pull together such talent, experience, and wise counsel. Because I found myself jotting down notes from each speaker. And with each person that appeared before these microphones, I found some very, very sage advice. And it seems to me that the tools for dealing with the challenges are quite apparent. It's been highlighted, of course, the problems. There are many, and I suspect there always will be problems in this world. But we have been dealing with problems for a long time. And not only can people deal with them, but in the particular case of Israel and the United States, both countries are particularly well equipped to be able to deal with problems, security and otherwise. And I'll elaborate in a minute. Our speakers covered a wide range of aspects of the relationship between the two countries. I think that if I were to share with you my thoughts as I listen to these comments, they would be that in toto, we got a very realistic picture of how things are in the world. We were told, and really appreciate, the work that Senator Mitchell did and the challenges, long-standing challenges in Ireland. Now, I have some first-hand knowledge of this, being of Irish ancestry, knowing how blockheaded we are, how much we like to talk about things, and point that all others are the cause of each of our problems. And, of course, being very disinclined to accept responsibility for those things that we do manage to occasionally get wrong. And so the extent of the problem, in my mind, dwarfs most of the things that we have discussed today. But the point is should be certainly very, very well taken, that often challenges seem intractable. Often they seem so daunting and so long-standing and so vicious that we can't deal with them. I don't believe that, and we have proof. The other major theme that emerges is change. Things are constantly changing. And one of the challenges that I believe we really have difficulty in understanding is the extent to which things change and the opportunities that that may offer. I'll give you an example. In Iraq, we've had a situation from 2003, 4, 5, 6, 7, and now 8 has morphed many times. And so where we find ourselves today is dramatically different than a year ago. And you could walk this back each year. The ability of people to understand this in my own country and in others, I think, is highly suspect. Why? Because they're difficult issues to grasp. If you're not there and you don't have firsthand knowledge, you have to rely on others. And I said, I think if we were honest with ourselves, we would appreciate that when people pass down stories, with each telling, there's always, it seems, a difference. This is a reality. Leads to another point. It seems to me that in dealing with change, we ought to recognize, if we're honest with ourselves, that we also often subscribe to a lot of mythology. We tend to come to believe things as being correct, true, accurate assessments. Someone on the outside, objectively, would probably think otherwise. This is a reality. It adds to the perception issue. I remember being severely chastised, Mr. Chairman, by one of your colleagues once when I was a slightly younger and certainly a lot less wise officer testifying in front of the United States Congress. And I thought I had my facts together, and I made the mistake of saying, Chairman, the facts are, and I got about 3 words out of my mouth before I was cut off in mid-sentence and reminded that at issue were perceptions. And the perceptions, the general perceptions, were a lot different than the facts, no matter how accurate I may have thought they were. I got the point, rather painfully. But we have to deal with perceptions. And one of the challenges today in security and in most of the things that we do, whether it's business or our relations, personal relationships, I think you would agree, is to deal with the reality of perceptions. How they come about? Many reasons. But if we're going to be effective in the business of which this conference is organized, and that is at the national policy level, it seems to me we've got to recognize that this is a major challenge. And dealing with these things really requires a mixed bag of tools, and they include many things in addition to the standard military force capabilities. I also think that in this business of perceptions, there's another change that's taken place, certainly in my lifetime, and that is that this idea of security has changed. And certainly in my younger days, it seemed more well-defined, didn't it? Those of you who are of similar hair color or lack of it. It was them and it was us. And usually there was a boundary and a border, and it was pretty easy, or so it seemed, to define the enemy or the problem. But today I'm not so sure, because security, I believe, is much closer to home. And as I look around, and I think as I, if you'll allow me to make an observation of this country, some of the bigger security issues are internal, as they are in my country. And as we wrestle with international challenges, we often are rudely awakened or reattuned to some things that I think often loom very large in security, and they're much closer to home. And they're things like the economic challenges that are rippling through the world today. So as we look at these very, very difficult issues, such as Iran, such as the Palestinian issue here in this country, it seems to me that we should be mindful that being successful in providing the security that we all desire, the stability for which we yearn, it requires that we address these issues in the comprehensive manner that they merit. They're complex issues. They're rarely a single issue. And most of them have deep roots, and they're not going to be solved by some quick, easy, would-be solution. As I, again, if you'll permit me, as I look at this beautiful country of Israel, it seems to me that, and I know I'll be in deep trouble at home, but my wife is thousands of miles away today, but her dear mother, my mother-in-law, was a woman from New York, and she had many opinions. And sometimes when we would try to divert her from her opinions, we were rather abruptly reminded, in her words, "I'm entitled to my opinions." Yes, Mom, we understand. But her opinions were also rooted in her experiences. And she went through the Great Depression of the end of the 1920s and 1930s and other things that we heard about when we were growing up. And there may be a few ancients here that may have experienced that. But she was nervous, often, anxious, seemingly always. And if you'll permit me, I see some of that here in this country. There are obviously many reasons. But I would like to encourage you to rise above this. And I'll tell you why. Because you have so many things going for you here in Israel that should be a foundation to overcome these problems, that it's not even a close contest. The spirit of the people that founded this country and is still here. The vitality, diversity of people from all over the world coming together. The indisputable capability of your military, the IDF. Battle tested many times. There is nobody in the region that's even close. Economic vitality. Political diversity, and then some. The list goes on and on. This is not just the makings, but the essential ingredients to me for success in dealing with problems. And on top of that, you have this relationship with the United States, particularly the security relationship. Seems to me a very, very tough team to beat in any circumstances. And so I would encourage you to look around, take advantage of these things. Look at the opportunities. Change in administration in the U.S., a change in administration, a change coming for sure here in Israel. I think that people in this country, Palestinians, generally are of the same mind. It's about time to solve some of these problems. There are going to be some bad actors. We're never going to be rid of them. There are going to be some people. Foreign Minister talked about them today. They're extremists. We found extremists in Iraq. As General Dave Petraeus called them, the irreconcilables. No matter what you do, they're not going to come on board. Fair enough. We'll have to get rid of them. But most people want the same things. And so this is opportunity. With change, new dynamics, new leadership, that's what it takes. This country is really blessed with many things. Of course, we're going to have different objectives from the U.S. We are very mindful of some world issues that you're very mindful of here, but we think at our global level are really of major concern. We are very interested in the Middle East. We've made great progress in Iraq. This has huge implications for Iran. Many of the things that are negative for some people, I think, turn out to be positive for others. So I'd like to wind it up with something I feel very strongly about. As we deal with security issues or any other issues that involve people beyond our own borders, the best way to approach it, in my experience and opinion, is to get our act together, if you'll pardon the vernacular, at home. To be squared away domestically. In my own experience as a military man, this means that our basic units of operating forces, companies of troops, platoons, individual ships, aircraft squadrons, these people be competent, professionally excellent. Their commanders have high confidence in their ability to execute whatever the mission is, however challenging. And the troops themselves feel really good about themselves. They're ready to go. They have confidence in their leadership, and they know they have the training and tools and equipment to do the job right. Why should this be different in a nation? I look at my own country. As we look around and face challenges around the world, I think the first order of business is to get squared away at home. We have lots of things to do to get our own backyard straightened. And from that position of strength, given all the other attributes, the rest should be maybe not easy, but certainly doable. And I see the hook is here. It's actually very clever. Say no more, it says, so I won't. Thanks very much.